Hello there. Welcome to Just the Discs. We talk about Blu-rays here. My name's Brian, and today we're talking Burt Reynolds. And we're talking a couple recent releases from Kino Lorber, both of which have Burt Reynolds, of course, sans mustache, interestingly enough, and both are directed by the great Robert Aldrich, who did films like The Dirty Dozen, Flight of the Phoenix. Did he do Bad Day at Black Rock? I think that might be him as well. But anyway, point being is that now I have to look. Bad Day. Anyway, I'll look it up later. Let's start with The Longest Yard on 4K. And this one is... there's a lot that I didn't know. John Sturges, for God's sake, directed Bad Day at Black Rock. My mistake. Aldrich and Sturges are similar types. Anyway, so there's a lot that I didn't know about the sort of context about this movie. I mean, for those that don't know, it is a sports prison film. So the idea is basically that Burt plays Paul Crewe, who is I don't know if you want to say, I guess disgraced ex-pro football player who we find out actually took part in a shaving points on at least one, if not more than that, games in his professional career, and so, you know, is kind of looked down upon in that way. And he's living with a very rich woman. I don't think they're married, but apparently Aldrich... No, I'm sorry, Al Ruddy, the producer. Al Ruddy, the producer of The Godfather, who is the character in the Offer TV show that's at the center of that movie. Anyway, the real Al Ruddy also produced this film, and he said that it was based on a real guy, and he didn't, I don't think, give the specifics, but it was a real pro ball player who had gotten injured and was living with, you know, this woman who's very rich and who ended up dumping him. But he had a story, and it comes up in one of the featurettes, about either he was in this high-end clothing store or somebody he knew was, and witnessed this guy, this ex-ball player, trying out a bunch of suit jackets. And he said something to the woman like, should I get the blue, the green, or the whatever? And she said something along the lines of, get all three, because when I basically when I dump you, you're going to need them. And he said that really haunted him, that interaction of this sort of kept man kind of scenario. And so that's basically where Paul Crewe is at the beginning of the movie. He is not in a great place mentally, and he actually has a really tough confrontation with this woman who is really not happy with him at this moment, as he's trying to get out the door to take her Maserati, which ends up being sort of his undoing in a way. Where he gets kind of violent with her, and there's actually discussion in the features where Burt, you know, talked to Aldrich about, like, I don't think, I'm not really comfortable with this, you know, throwing this woman down and sort of, you know, beating her up a little bit. He's like, I just don't think I can keep the audience if I do that. Aldrich says, you can do it, meaning like Burt Reynolds at that time, this is 1974, I think. This comes out, 74, yeah. Burt Reynolds at that time has so much charisma that he can get away with that, and still the audience doesn't totally lose him. Although Paul Crewe is an incredibly selfish jerk of a character, and this really does set him up. So he has this confrontation. He takes her Maserati, and, you know, he's drinking. He's got a drink in the car with him. And he just starts sort of joyriding with it, and the cops start chasing him, and then he ends up dumping the car in the river as a sort of FU to the woman. And he gets, well, he's going to get arrested, and then he starts beating up a cop, and then he really gets arrested, and he gets thrown in jail. And it's a specific prison that he has been requested to be brought to, because the warden there, played incredibly well by a very evil Eddie Albert, who is actually one of the through lines between this and the second movie as well, wants him there because he has a semi-pro team that's made up of like guards and staff, and he wants some help to get his team trained. And Paul Crewe is an ex-all-pro football player, so he figures Paul Crewe can help him, and that Paul Crewe will want to help him because in exchange for his services, he'll get a much easier sentence and he'll be taken care of, like really taken care of, nice food and everything. But Paul Crewe, being the stubborn jerk that he is just like, hey man, I just want to do my time. I haven't picked up a football in 8 years. I don't care. Basically, no. And so then, of course, that really angers the warden, whose second in command is played by the great Ed Lauder, who's actually sort of the captain of the semi-pro team. Ed Lauder then is instructed to take him and give him hard time. So they throw him in with the inmates, and they're doing like hard labor stuff, and he's getting no help, no advantage at all. In fact, he's treated worse than some of the prisoners because of him turning down the warden, which is a very bad idea. So after really taking a beating, he decides, okay, maybe I can do this team thing. So he's like, look, I've got an idea. I'll put together a team that you can play against, an exhibition game. This is how we do it in the pros. We take an exhibition team and we play them, and we beat them badly, but it's sort of a good training exercise. And he's like, I'll find some prisoners to play and we'll get a team together. And so that's sort of the premise. The warden agrees. He's like, you have 4 weeks to train these guys, which is obviously not a lot of time, and you will play my semi-pro team in an exhibition game. And obviously don't think about winning. Actually, that's not mentioned in the conversation. It's just assumed that they won't win. But then as we start to go, we see the team starts coming together. There's a lot of interesting folks. Ray Nitschke is actually one of the players on the semi-pro guards team. He, of course, of the Green Bay Packers, and he's really good in the movie. But then, it's a cool sort of guys on a mission kind of thing where he's going around and getting a bunch of different players from the prison, one of which is Richard Kiel. And I think maybe, if not his first performance, one of his early performances. He's one of the guys, and there's a bunch of other folks in here that are really great, including James Hampton, who I'm a huge fan of. You'll know him as the dad from Teen Wolf, and he plays a character called Caretaker. And he's sort of the guy in prison, and this is a common thing in prison movies. There's the guy that can get you anything. James Hampton is that guy, and he becomes the team manager. So he's sort of at first he's kind of like, I don't know about you, superstar. Everybody calls Burt superstar in this really fun, sarcastic way. And he's like, I don't know about you. He's like, you could have done anything. He's like, but you shaving points on a football game, that's just downright un-American. And so everybody's kind of down on, like, he could have been a murderer and they would have not minded, but shaving points is just, going against your teammates. And, that's a thing that sort of haunts him through the film in a way. Anyway, James Hampton is great in this, and he and Burt have a really great rapport together. And James Hampton actually shows up for a minute in the second movie as well. But yeah, so they get this team together, and he's training them, and he's trying to motivate them. They want to beat on the guards, and so of course they want to play. And the game itself is a really wonderful sequence. And there's some dramatic stuff that comes out that makes it difficult to play the game straight. So I won't get into that stuff, but it's really great, and it's neat where it goes. And it was a movie that no studio at the time was really excited about. They didn't think sports films would be a big thing. And I guess at the time there wasn't anything that had done gangbusters money, and this movie was highly successful. And then you started to see a bunch of sports movies after this, all the stuff that you'd see in the 70s, Bad News Bears, Fast Break. There was just a lot of them coming after this. But this is a groundbreaking movie in that sense, and that was the thing I didn't really know about it. But it's a great Burt performance. He, again, is kind of unlikable, but he always has that Burt charm, so it's very funny. And there's a lot of great comedy in the movie, as well as some dramatic stakes and some characters that you like, maybe having some problems. And I won't go into that specifically either, but But yeah, I just love James Hampton and Burt Reynolds together, and Eddie Albert is great. Ed Lauter is great as this, tough head of the guards. He's a perfect fit. And yeah, it's just a really, really enjoyable movie. Now this 4K is a brand new HDR Dolby Vision master from a 4K scan of the original camera negative. I think this looks really nice. There is always something about certain 70s films, like it's not sharp quite in the same way, of course, that things would be, if they were shot more recently, but it does look really nice, and I was really happy with it. So that's a really nice transfer. And then it has multiple commentaries on here. I think they're bringing over some stuff from the DVD. So you have the audio commentary with Burt Reynolds and Al Ruddy, and that is great. I just loved hearing the two of them reminisce. They have some great stories about all aspects of the production, including Ray Nitschke, and there's some great bits where they're just talking about other football movies, and Burt calls out like North Dallas 40 as one of his favorites, and just some really cool stuff. Al Ruddy, just a guy that's, been in it. He's a Hollywood guy with a lot of great stories, and so they're just telling stories about how certain things were done, and I really dug that. And then they have a commentary from film critics Alan Silver and James Orsini, authors of the Whatever Happened to Robert Aldrich, The Life in His Films book, and these guys are great too, with all kinds of context and facts and, some other stories about the production and things like that. So I really dug that. And then we have two featurettes. They're both about 12 minutes or so. Doing Time on the Longest Yard featurette. These are, I think, straight from the old DVD. And so they interview Al Ruddy, and he sort of talks about the roots of the script. And Burt is also interviewed and joins in talking about the script. And also interviewed are like Michael Silver, senior writer for Sports Illustrated, Howard Balzer, USA Today columnist, a very young-looking Bill Simmons, who is an ESPN columnist at the time of this. And yeah, so they're just talking about the movie and how much they like it and things like that. And a lot of these guys come back in the Unleashing the Mean Machine featurette, which includes Burt and Al Ruddy again. James Hampton has some good stories. And then Michael Silver and Bill Simmons. They're specifically talking about, in this case, the sports side of the movie, the football side, how they dealt with it, how they filmed it, some Ray Nitschke stories told here, and some other stuff. And yeah, there's some good stuff with Burt talking about Ray Nitschke saying things like, nobody heard him, meaning Burt. He's like, and then he said, "That's my job." Like he's gonna hit Burt. And so yeah, there's some really good stuff in there because Burt is doing a lot of his own stunt stuff and football playing stuff. I mean, I can't say he's doing all of it, but definitely some of it. He was the guy doing that stuff in the 70s, and that's really great. So yeah, nice little featurettes, two great commentaries, and a good-looking 4K transfer. The commentaries are on the 4K, the featurettes are on the Blu-ray, with the commentaries, obviously. But yeah, very much enjoyed this revisit. Had been a long time since I had seen it. And yeah, just a really solid Burt movie, And then this, we have Hustle from 1975. It's fascinating because it's a movie that I was aware of, but I had not seen. And it is, again, another Robert Aldrich and Burt Reynolds movie. Also features Eddie Albert, which I'll talk about in a second. And it is one of the, I think it's the only Robert production, R-O-B-U-R-T. And that is after the success of Longest Yard, Aldrich and Burt Reynolds made a production company. I think this is the only movie they made. They don't comment too much on the commercial success of it, but it may or may not have done that well. I don't know. It certainly couldn't have done as well as Longest Yard because it's just not the same kind of movie. And in fact, it's a very subdued Burt. It's a very serious, dramatic Burt. And he's playing a cop called Phil Gaines in L.A., and it's more of a police procedural neo-noir type thing, basically, because we open with James Hampton driving a bus full of kids to Malibu, and they get off the bus, and the kids are playing on the beach, and suddenly they look, and there's like the body of this young woman dead on the beach. And So that becomes the main focus of the movie in a lot of ways. Like, how did she die? It appears to be a suicide, but there are some other players involved, including a rich, not so great dude played by Eddie Albert, who is sort of seeing... Here's the other part of it. Burt plays this cop whose girlfriend is a prostitute, played by the wonderful Catherine Deneuve, and she had to be courted, and Burt, had to charm her into coming and doing this gig, and she does a great job. And in fact, it's the most lively, upbeat performance I've seen from her, especially at the beginning of the movie, maybe ever. Like, she's smiling. She doesn't smile a lot in a ton of movies, as far as I've seen, and so she's pretty upbeat in this, and they have an interesting relationship, which is a difficult one for the Bill Gaines character to reconcile. But anyway, Eddie Albert is seeing her, and so that's a whole other complicated thing. His partner is played by the great Paul Winfield, and they are initially satisfied with the idea that the girl was a suicide, and they find out she was involved with some things that could lead to the idea that makes sense. But her parents are played by Eileen Brennan and Ben Johnson. And Ben Johnson in particular is he's not real happy with the idea that she killed herself. He doesn't buy it. And so he starts poking around and getting himself in trouble, and eventually Burt and Paul Winfield are like, dude, just butt out of it and we'll go investigate. We'll figure out what happened. And so it gets complicated in that way. But it's dark. It's a dark movie, and Burt has a few lighter moments, but mostly he's pretty just the facts, ma'am, about, the way he's approaching this character. He's a pretty world-weary character, and Burt does a great job with it, I think. I think it's intriguing that this is based on a book by Steve Shagan, who wrote the script, who also wrote Voyage of the Damned and Save the Tiger. And Save the Tiger especially... I feel the connection there. That tracks for me, like just two world-weary guys, Jack Lemmon's character in that film and Burt's character in this film. Like, they feel like they could meet in a bar and just commiserate, it just feels like of a piece in that sense. Also featured in the film, Daisy Duke herself, Catherine Bach, and again, Eileen Brennan plays the wife to Ben Johnson. So you get a little Last Picture Show reunion also. But a solid neo-noir, feels a little bit like a TV movie in parts, but it's solid, I think, overall. And really nice to see this getting a brand new HD master from a 4K scan of the 35 negative. Also features a commentary by film critics Alan Silver and James Orsini, so that's complementing the Longest Yard commentary too. So some really nice Burt double bill action happening here between Longest Yard and Hustle. Good stuff. Both recommended and both available now from Kino. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.